And next up, we're going to be discussing a film called These Days with director Ashley Causey. Um, and I do believe we have a trailer for that. So, Mikey, take it away.
At the ballot box. And this generation right here, y'all got all the power. They don't even realize it. They coming for the wrong group. This is a lot of y'all's first time being able to vote. They coming for the wrong generation, and y'all about their life.
Awesome. So I do believe Ashley Causey is with us, and I think they can let us know whether or not Satura will be able to join us. But um, if not, it's a pleasure to meet you, Ashley. and and thank you for joining us, and thank you for choosing us as a platform. Tell us a little bit about, you know, the inception of this film and sort of the overlay of real life and real life sentiments, maybe not delivered by the real life possessors of those sentiments. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. So happy to be here. Unfortunately, Satora probably won't be able to make it, but I'll try to tell her story and mine at the same time. The story of this film, I kind of got involved in youth activism in high school with the March for Our Lives movement, gun violence prevention movement, which was run mostly by the youth of America, basically. And I actually met Satora through that organization. She helped me found the March for Our Lives chapter in Birmingham, Alabama, which is not, a place that you would typically think of activism in that sense coming from being a gun violence prevention movement. But we did that through high school, and we both grew up. And she ended up going on to form a organization called Cell A65, which fights for the liberation and justice of all people through direct action and radical community healing. Which was kind of founded after the murder of George Floyd, as so many other movements were. And I was just incredibly inspired by her actions through that organization. They were out every single week protesting in different forms. They were doing, educational drives, trying to get people educated, getting people to vote. Now they feed the homeless community in Birmingham. They've done so many amazing things, and just seeing her move on from what we both started at and to continue to flourish in another organization was incredibly encouraging to me. It really inspired this film. We all know whenever we're young, we hear the stereotypes. It happens with every generation. We all get stereotyped in different ways by older generations. My experience in that activism community, I wasn't really seeing those stereotypes. They didn't fit the people that I knew, and I know that they always fit somebody. But getting to see the way that my generation was stepping up in a lot of ways really inspired me. So like you said, a lot of these stories are dramatized. So it's stories that I've heard from other people, but told in a dramatic way that was written with a script, except for Satora's portion of the film, which was actual protest footage that I had taken myself
Wow.
at a mall in Birmingham. So the footage you see in that film is very real. The way that the peaceful protesters are brutalized, as sad as it is incredibly real. And they were actually able to use that footage in court to kind of make their case as well. But yeah, the whole reason that Cell A65 was started and why I kind of started this film is because of a man named E.J. Bradford, who was unfortunately murdered by police at the Galleria Mall in Birmingham in 2018 over the Thanksgiving weekend.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and some people do know his story, but unfortunately, not as many people that know his story as much as they should. So he had a permit to carry a weapon, and a shooting at the mall happened over Thanksgiving weekend on Black Friday, and police saw that he had a weapon, and assumed that he was the shooter, and shot and murdered him. And advertised to the entire community that, we caught him, there's nothing to worry about, before they had confirmed who it was and kind of had already put his name out in the press, and a lot of people had already vilified him. and it turned out it was not the case. It was not him. He was trying to protect people. And it just kind of shows you the hypocrisy that, we want. A lot of people have the idea that we should arm as many people as possible to stop these accidents. But when it's people of color, we do not treat the situation the same way. And a lot of assumptions are unfortunately made. So that case is really, it's why they were started. And that the footage in this film is actually from the mall where he was murdered. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the case that drove it all. We just really want to get his story out there and try to get some justice for him, because there's still been no justice for EJ Bradford.
Can you tell us a little bit about, how folks outside of Birmingham can be helpful to uplifting his story and helping your organizations continue to shed light and demand transparency?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been several like videos, and like now this did an video on EJ Bradford's case, and I know that I think some NFL players also had put his name on their helmets. So there's articles and things that you can share, but the most important way that you can help that case and help get transparency is to go to cella65.com, which is cell like jail cell, A as in alpha, and then 65.org, actually, sorry. And that leads you to Satora's organization, where they have EJ's complete story, the history of their organization, and the different causes they have. And you can also donate to their organization, because they're not a nonprofit currently. They are, it's a bunch of young people funding it themselves just trying to make it. And also, like I said, feed the homeless community. They just had their feeding day today, actually. And so everything is funded by them. So any donations you have can help a multitude of different resources that they provide.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And also thank you so much for your advocacy. I mean, I'm an elder millennial of the first millennials, I guess, is sort of how I can tell that. And, I have spent a lot of time on the front lines in protests, locking arms with my peers in Chicago, where I'm from, around Laquan McDonald, Kia Boyd. I mean, the list tragically goes on and on. And a lot of the time it feels like you're shouting at statues, and, what advice do you have for other young folks in the movement who get to that point where they're like, what's going to change? Why isn't it changing? Will it ever change? What helps see you through?
Yeah, definitely. It's hard, especially with the world we're living in today. And COVID-19 is just kind of it's kind of upended everyone. But just self-care, I think, is the most important part, taking care of yourself and knowing that you can't do it all yourself. That's incredibly important, because I know a lot of people try to take that on. And it's so hard not to want to do it all, because I'm one of those people where I'm like, oh, I could just do it all myself. It's so much easier to do it that way. But you really need people behind you. But also, on the reverse of that is, even if it's just you, if you put hard work into it, you can accomplish pretty much anything that you want to. With this film, I had a lot of different stories that I had wanted to tell with it. And this is my first short film. I did the camera, the sound, and everything, and it kind of shows through in the quality. But I think that the story shines through. But it's that quote of like, just grab a camera and do it, basically, just to make a film. And that was kind of my idea behind it. I think that stories like this need to be told, especially for representation and things like that. So people who are interested in film, you may not have the highest quality equipment or the most resources, but if you just work hard and you have a good story, I think that that'll shine through a lot. But yeah, just make sure and take care of yourself, check in with others, and yeah, that's about the best. That's the best advice I've gotten from people from the civil rights movement who I've talked to from the 60s. That's just making sure to take care of yourself, because you can't take care of others until you take care of yourself first.
Yeah, that footage in the mall was powerful. In watching it, it felt very, very real, but I still, at the back of my mind, was hoping that is this just brilliant acting or guerrilla filmmaking? Because I just we've been inundated with these images over the years, and it becomes increasingly more difficult to internalize and process. Um, but at the root of it, it's a story that has to be told, and it's a narrative that exists and continues to exist. So I appreciate y'all's bravery in taking on that direct action, and putting your actual physical bodies on the line there. Um, but at the end of the film, when um, the website came up, I was compelled. I'm like, I gotta go check out more. And you have a lot of very amazing resources on that website, specifically around how to avoid calling the police. And I just found that to be so profound. I mean, a very exhaustive list: mental health, assault, um, de-escalation of tension, and all these other options and alternatives to calling the police, and calling out that calling the police has a lot of unintended consequences that come with it. So you need to be prepared and understand what that means. And I was like floored reading through this. So I'm just curious about the genesis of that, and how other organizations can maybe adopt similar information to help steward folks away from calling police as a first option.
Yeah, that's through Satora's organization,
Mhm.
who I just support as an advocate. So I can't talk on it too much, but thankfully, I mean, we live in a time now where you have the internet. You have so many resources at your disposal. And myself personally, on like my Instagram, which is it's listed below. Just making sure like to share resources, but like you have link trees now. You can put as many resources as you want in those link trees and attach it to your social media, and then you share stuff on your stories, and then you can refer people back to that. But yeah, just making sure to do your research. There's so many organizations run by people of color that already have these resources, so you can go to those and support them and share their content. So then it leads the people back to their social media, which I think is incredibly important that they get the credit that they deserve. But yeah, we have a plethora of information, especially unfortunately, with every one of these incidents, we keep seeing these resources pop up again and again. So, just saving them and making sure you're getting the information that's most helpful. I think that that's incredibly important.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your advocacy and allyship. And I feel better about the future of the world when I see more and more young people stepping up and calling it out the BS. So kids these days, in my mind, are going to be the future. I tell you that much. So I appreciate you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you. And until next time.